Connecting to cloud server. All right.
All right, it should be
It
recording.
says I am recording.
Great.
All right,
So,
I'm gonna stay on, but I'm gonna go over here for a while.
okay.
So just bellow my name if you need me.
Can you mute yourself too?
Yes,
Thank you.
I am muting. I have a muted response. There I am. Am I? Oh, it's, I have to be sure to mute the right Kimberly McCoy though.
Right. Host. Okay, you're muted. Okay, so Ephra and Aaron, you guys are still on unmuted or
Yes.
muted? Okay, there we go. So for everybody that's joined, the reason that we've got Joe running the controls is because I am at home, which I usually work from home, but I go in town for mentor chat, so the internet connection is better. In rural Montana, it's not that great. If I drop out, I don't want the whole chat to end, so Joe is hosting and recording, meaning I can't mute you if you're not muted yourself. So if everyone can keep their mute button on until they have a question, that would be great, so that we avoid background noise. So that's the setup we have today. Today's mentor chat is going to be on science communication on the platform Twitter. Some of us are good at it, some of us are terrible at it. So we're going to learn from a couple of people who have done really well on the Twitter platform talking about science. And it's going to be kind of like a panel style where I will put a question to both of them and then they'll answer, maybe 5-10 minutes. It really doesn't matter how long your answers take. We'll just let the conversation kind of roll organically. And if anyone has a question, I can't see the hand raising tool anymore or really the chat tool. So you're just going to have to jump in and hopefully we'll have plenty of time at the end. So I will really briefly introduce the two speakers we have today, but they're really going to tell you about themselves. So we've got Ephra Rivera Serrano. He's a research associate studying virology, which is very, it's a good topic to study right now. Studying virology at UN Chapel Hill, and his Twitter handle is @NakedCapsid. He'll tell you what that means if you're not a virologist. And he started the program Unique Scientists, which highlights the journeys of diverse scientists. We also have Erin McGee. She's a PhD candidate at University of Arizona studying lizards and their diets. Her Twitter handle is @afro_herper. And she started the wildly popular Find That Lizard game on Twitter, which you haven't played, you definitely should. And she recently started making YouTube videos and started a Patreon page. So if you have questions about that, feel free to ask her about that also. So we'll start with, I'll ask both of you to give a 5-minute background on when and why you started Twitter. And Erin, do you want to start?
Sure. So I started Twitter about 4 years ago when I first started grad school because my graduate advisor was on Twitter. And so he was just like, it was a great way for him to build community and to share his research with other people. And so as a first year grad student, and just like, well, for me, I'm always like, you know, thinking a couple of years ahead. And I was like, okay, so what am I going to do after grad school? I don't know, but I want people to kind of like know who I am and start building that community. So when I am ready to start looking for jobs, then, you know, people already kind of have like a taste of who I am. And so that's when I hopped onto Twitter. And then at that point, I was just like, I don't even really know what I'm going to post about here. I'm just going to, you know, whatever I think is interesting is what I'm going to post about. And hopefully people like it. And if they don't, well, that's okay too. So, yeah.
So for me, it was, I think 6 years ago. It was around the time where I was in grad school and I was about to take my qualifying exams. And there were a lot of, you know, during the qualifying exam, at least for me, it was like write your grant proposal or on different topic yet related somehow. And so I passed my exam and stuff, but during that exam, there's a lot of questions that are not necessarily related to your research. And I remember during that exam, a committee member suggested to expand my horizons and learn something beyond just the virus that I was studying, for example. And so I decided to just join Twitter as a way of almost like a bystander of me. I'm just going to follow all these journals and get notifications for the new articles, not necessarily related to virus, but like cells and immunology and whatever. So I started almost as a bystander. I'm just going to follow. And instead of getting email notifications about the new articles, I'm just going to get them from journals that I care about. And so that's how I started. And then just retweeting it just to keep track of the ones that I cared about. And it just grew. And then I think similar to what Aaron was saying, and I started like tweeting about, oh, this is a really cool article. And that was it until, you know, people are starting commenting and what do you think about this one? And then once you start forming those conversations, then you start building your voice. And that's how it happened for me. And then I think very few of us really like started knowing that we were going to make it the way that we're doing it right now. We sort of like learn, and it just we sort of like learn as we go as to what people want to hear, what people don't want to hear, and you start seeing patterns. So you start developing your own branding and all that. So that we can definitely talk later about.
Yeah, so it sounds like you both weren't quite sure your Twitter accounts were going to grow into what they are today, which for people who haven't been on your Twitter pages, you each have over 20,000 followers, I think, at the moment. So that's how you got started and why. Can you each talk about what your Twitter account, what is your brand now? What do you post about? And how do you interact with the Twitter community, which I know might be two separate questions, but they might be intertwined, and I know is important for both of you.
You want to go first, Aaron?
Sure. So my brand is my Twitter game, hashtag Find That Lizard, where I post a picture that has a lizard camouflage somewhere within the picture. It's in its natural environment, and then people have to find it. And so basically I'm kind of just like the lizard lady, and people will like send me pictures of like lizards or things that aren't lizards and ask me to like identify them. And so that's like the main part of my brand, but then it's also kind of a lot of advocacy, especially for Black women in wildlife fields, and just kind of advocating for like people with like marginalized identities and that type of thing, because that's an important part of who I am and my experience. And it kind of just like my Twitter account really started as just telling people about like my experiences as an undergrad student, and then as a grad student as I progressed throughout my degree. And then the Find That Lizard stuff kind of just kind of somehow got into the mix and got like really big. I'm not really 100% sure how that happened. It was really just one of those things where it's like I'm posting about my research, because obviously my research is with lizards, and I'm just posting about my research, and then it kind of just developed and grew from there, just listening to the feedback of the people who were following me, because it's like you have to figure out the balance between listening to what other people say and then doing what you want to do, because you know what your followers and what like the supporters and your fans, the feedback that they're giving you is important, but at the same time you also have to stay true to yourself. So that's been kind of an interesting balance for me. But there's some things that are just like, okay, well, I'm a person and I think this is funny, and it has nothing to do with like ecology or lizards or science or anything, and so I'll post those things. And then there are other things where it's just like, oh, this might be a controversial take on academia, but it's something that affects me, so I'm going to post this anyway. And then other times it's just like nothing but lizards. I might just spend the whole day posting like lizard content. So yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I think my brand is microscopy pictures. I'm well known for that, to the point where I even have a nickname related to that. It's part of my Twitter bio. It all started with, I am a microscopist by training. I've been doing it for over 10 years. And I just ended up with this large amount of microscopy pictures, from black and gray to colorful and whatnot, like over 1 million of probably on my hard drive. So I just started posting it, because sometimes what you think that is so simple for you, and all those failed experiments, at least in my case, or images that will never make it to a publication, they just die in your hard drive. And so it hit on me that a lot of people don't care if the experiment worked or not. They just want to see beautiful pictures, or even if it's something very, very simple that you would consider simple, a lot of people will find it fascinating. So I started digging through my hard drive. I asked my advisor, is this okay? Like I was done with all that data, and she's like, yeah, it's fine. So I just started posting them every now and then and just see people's reaction, and they seem to like it. It's almost like blending biology with art. So, and at the same time, you're captivating your audience attention, just like Erin with her lizards almost. Pictures just tell a story. In her case, I find a lizard. I could, depending on how I want to approach things, I can either just post it and use it as a tool to inspire, or I can just make it as a game. I can ask like, what do you think is going on in this picture, for example? So depending on what you want to do. So that is a huge part of it. I'm now trying to stick to like Fridays and do it like Fluorescence Friday and just stick it to one day, because I like consistency. I think you're gonna see that as you grow your audience, that people would expect certain things, and it's easier for you if you just have some patterns going on. So I try to stick it to like once a week to keep the audience engaged and waiting for it. And then of course, diversity and inclusion through Unique Scientist, that sort of happened because it's something that I'm very passionate about. And just like Erin, just academia, and I have a big mouth and it gets me in trouble quite often. But almost always, sometimes, only sometimes it gets me in trouble. Most of the time people actually listen. Like I tweeted a couple of days ago on the current status and how it is painful to go to a lab, and when the whole university is in the middle of shutdown and all the problems behind that. And the moment I tweeted it, my advisor is on Twitter. So like he saw it. And when I tweeted that, I said, this is gonna either get me in trouble or something is gonna happen, and a good change. And like we soon met yesterday, and he's like, well, I saw your tweet and I'm making the decision, like no one's gonna go to the lab, we're shutting down. And I'm like, well, at least it was something positive. So every time I give like tips on like, what is your brand, or how do you Twitter, or why are you there? I said, I always come back to, you can make a big difference if you do it right. It takes a long time to learn from your mistakes and know what right means for you. But once you get a sense of the words that you can say to trigger a feeling on other people, and that is the key. Just make sure that your words trigger some sort of feeling of it. Your worst enemy is just to send stuff that is completely neutral, at least on social media.
Okay, so let's talk about growing your following. And I think you both probably touched on this indirectly, because talking about what you did probably grew your following. But if we were focused on that question in particular, did you actively try to grow your following at any point? And if you did, what did you do? And if you didn't, do you have suggestions for people who are looking to grow their following?
All right, so for me, I like the point where I realized that I was really wanted to like grow following more, and like how to like kind of like do that was a couple of years ago. I don't know if any of you guys like heard about like Goliath, the giant tadpole. That was like the first time that I ever like went viral. So it's like I would do my work, excuse me, in southwestern or southeastern Arizona and southwestern United States. So they were like draining all these different ponds to get rid of bullfrogs, and they found a tadpole that was like this big. And I posted about it to Twitter. And so like that's totally off brand for me, not lizards at all. But like I just posted about it because I thought it was interesting, and then I ended up going viral over that, and I gained like a lot of followers. And it was interesting because like after like the initial like gain of followers, I also had like a bunch of people like mass unfollow me. So it was like so like people came for Goliath, but then like a lot of people like stayed for the lizard content, but then they left when they realized that it wasn't going to be any more like giant tadpole content. So it's kind of like having to like that kind of like like the people like leaving didn't discourage me because I had like a net gain, but it was like, oh, people find this kind of stuff interesting. Let me go out and find more stuff that people, you know, might find interesting. And then, so then I kind of started thinking a little bit more strategic about it, as opposed to just like posting stuff here and there and like just posting anything. I started thinking about, okay, so I know I kind of see what people think is interesting. Let me start thinking about like other stuff that I could post about that people might think is interesting as well. And so then I started instead of just posting pictures of like lizards by themselves, I'd post like pictures of like lizards that I had caught, where like they had like the lasso on them still, and then people would be like, why do you have a lizard on a leash? And I'm like, well, it's not a leash, let me tell you about this research that I'm doing. And so like stuff like that kind of started getting people interesting, where it was just like, it doesn't have to be like the most weirdest or most unusual thing, but it's like people are like just recognizing that people are like really curious about the unknown. And then once you like introduce them to those types of things, then they'll ask you questions. And then once you start engaging with them, then they kind of stick around, because that's like the biggest part about Twitter. It's engaging with other people on Twitter. Like, even if you like, you could have like some of the best content out there. Like, there are people who go like viral with like 100,000 likes and, you know, hundreds of thousands of retweets, and they don't gain followers at all. And it's because like they're not like necessarily engaging. So like it's about, you have to like build a community and like a support network, and like be regularly engaging with the people who are like doing like similar stuff, as far as like SciComm or whatever. Like, they don't have to necessarily be like in your same research, but it should be like within like SciComm and that type of thing. And that way. And so like the next way that I went viral was I did a couple of videos with different women in science in response to like when the Discovery channel had that commercial where it was just like all men. I was in that response video that went viral, and the only reason that I was in that video was because I created a community of other people where we were able to get together and say, okay, well, we want to have a response to that. But if I'm sitting here, you know, by myself, not interacting with anyone, then I wouldn't have had that opportunity. And also both Twitter and Instagram, also social media in general, is an algorithm. The more you interact with people, the more you're going to be put onto other people's timelines and stuff. So it's a mixture of building community, interacting with people, and then thinking about the type of content that people would like. And then like one of the greatest parts about it, I think, is that like not just increasing like getting my followership increased, or like teaching people about stuff, but I've also like have like a bunch of like different like Twitter friends. And so like, you know, people think, oh, that's just like your online buddy, but no, like I get to meet people, like when I meet people in like real life, and like we've been like chatting for years before we even got a chance to meet, like those are like, you know, genuine friendships. When we finally get to meet, like Ephra and I got to meet at SciCommers in October, and like we got to hang out and everything, and so that was like super cool. So like, you know, there's other benefits to it as well. So,
Yeah, I certainly agree. I think almost everyone who has a large number of followers on Twitter, at some point they had a viral tweet, and I'm not going to deny it, because I think we all get those booms. It's not easy to get there, and sometimes you don't even expect them. As Erin said, like the most random thing that you can tweet is the one that's gonna go viral. It's really hard to predict. But yeah, just touching on what Erin said about keeping that audience, and really what engagement means is not just talking to the void and just unplugging it and letting people fight or discuss or whatever. If you really want the followers and you really want them to engage with you, you have to have the time to respond. You have to have the time to answer to their inquiries, because the moment that you tweet something and they ask you a question and you don't respond, and then the next person does it, answers or whatever, and you don't ever acknowledge their engagement part, is the moment that they're going to start unfollowing, or that they will be like, well, this person's never going to reply to me back, so like, why bother? And if that's your strategy, it's likely not going to work, because might as well for them follow a journal. And most people don't want to follow journals, they want to follow you. So the key is just to always keep the engagement and just be authentic. People can really tell, even if it's through text, we all can tell whether you're genuine or not. So people will want to follow who you are as a person. And so your personality really just can take you places, your authentic self, and making sure that how you present yourself on social media is really who you are, because that really carries you a long way. And we're all different. Doesn't mean that you have to have the perfect personality, the most likable personality, because we're all different. Some people might think of me in one way on social media. I'm just hoping that when they meet me in person, I am that person that they had in mind. But at the end of the day, you have to always stick to who you are, because otherwise you're not going to be, no one's really going to believe you there. Another thing is making sure that your bio and your profile picture, as soon as I go into your profile on Twitter, first impressions do matter. Every time I get a new follower, and I say this all the time, every time I get a new follower, instantly I go to their Twitter, and the first thing I'm going to look is their picture, their banner, and their bio. If it doesn't tell me anything, you just lost a follower right there. And likewise, if I have a viral tweet, just like Aaron said, and then someone goes to my Twitter but my bio doesn't say anything about who I am, they might not follow me. Or if my bio is not accurate, they'll follow me, but then don't follow me after realizing what I'm mostly tweeting about. So just make sure that that is what you want to convey and what your goal on social media is. We should all have at least one goal before you start rambling around into tweets, is making sure that it's well defined for you and well defined and crafted in a way that tells other people to join you into this conversation. And if you are into science communication, then making sure that your tweets are educational, of course, but also thought-provoking, so that they can get that engagement part happens. Not just a statement, not just a yes or no type of question, but something that is thought-provoking and that they would ask you to please expand, or, well, I'm curious about this, can you expand? Because every time you reply to one of those questions, it's going to refresh on people's timelines. It's going to then increase your chances of being seen. If you just tweet a yes or no question and people just like it, I always say that you really don't want to like, you want to retweet. Yes, someone might like your post, and that sometimes shows up on people's timeline. If they have few followers, or if a lot of their followers like your stuff, it will show up. But really what you want is retweet. And I'm to the point where I know if my tweet is gonna get over 1,000 likes, within the hour, I can tell you if my tweet is gonna get 1,000 likes or just 200 likes, based only on retweets alone. So that's really what you want. And if you want to retweet, let me see, how can I phrase this? Depending on how you phrase your tweet, it's going to get you either a like or a retweet. And a like, yeah, it triggers an emotion. There's a reason, and I always explain this as in the thumb stopping emotion. You're scrolling down your Twitter, we all do it on our phone, and when you get a like, it's because someone just stopped their thumb scrolling and hit that like. There was a feeling there. Doesn't necessarily mean that they want to retweet it and show it to all their followers, or just save them for themselves. Usually when that happens is because your tweet was somehow resourceful. There's something that they can get out of it, that they want to keep it, or that they think that their audience will take advantage of. And that's really what you want to do if you want to start building your audience. Your tweets have to be original and have to be resourceful. And those are the two things that, to me, every time I craft a tweet, I think about what I want it to look like. And to be honest, there's days where, like Friday nights, for example, I really don't want to engage. It's my family time. Then I purposely sometimes craft the tweets. I don't want to disappear, but I craft them in a way that people just like them and see that I'm doing something. And if they want to comment, I'll comment back. But tweets that are for engagement take a lot of time. I think, as Erin mentioned, you have to be there. You have to be responsive. And if I was to tweet something right now about COVID-19, and I know I don't have the time to reply to all of them, might as well just don't do it because it's going to affect me as a scientist. So, so those are my main two things, and just always keep that in mind.
Great, thank you. And that kind of brought up a couple of thoughts in my mind. One, it sounds like it takes a lot of time. So how much time are you spending on Twitter? Has it changed, and have you learned how to manage that time? And then the second question is, what kind of benefit does you being on Twitter, what kind of benefit do you get for your academic career, science career, that you would put in that amount of time? And I'll start with you, Efra, because I think Erin, I'm not sure if she had to step away for a second.
Yeah, just get back then. You want to go, Erin?
Sure. So for me, I spend a lot of time on Twitter, probably like a few hours every day. And then when I'm like creating content, so like if I'm making if I'm doing like the Find That Lizard stuff, outside of having to actually like go out and collect pictures, because like about 99% of the pictures that I use are photos that I've taken myself. I also have to edit the photos, and then I have to like trial and error. So like I have like a like my own like fake Twitter account, so that way I could post the photos to see how they come out on Twitter and everything. And so sometimes like if this photo really comes out horribly, I'm just like, well, I guess I need to go and pick a new picture now, and then I have to edit the new picture. And then sometimes like I'm not necessarily sure of like the lizard ID in all of them, especially if it's like with lizards that I haven't worked with in the past. And so then I have to, or like if it's like for some whiptail lizards, they look really, really similar to one another. And so then I'm like, I don't remember exactly which lizard this was. Let me go back to my field guide and like double check this. And so then that takes up some time. And then thinking about so like I post like information about the lizards, and so I'm like, okay, what information do I think that people are going to find interesting? What facts about these lizards are like going to be like really cool to people, and that kind of thing. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but like you end up spending a lot of time when it comes to creating content, especially when it's like reoccurring content. Sometimes it's like I'm walking out the house and I'm like, oh, there's a lizard there. That's not going to be a good Find That Lizard post, but like I could just tell people that it's a lizard, and then I take a picture and I post it, and you know, that's that. So and then what was the second question again?
Second question was, with all the time that you're spending on Twitter, what does it do to benefit your career?
So it has a lot of benefits where it like puts my name in rooms that I might never have been able to put myself in. Like if I was just like any other graduate student, like people people end up like knowing me. Like I'll go to conferences and people walk up and they're just be like, oh my gosh, like you run, you know, the Find That Lizard game on Twitter and that type of thing. And like I was like, I was at this one conference and I was like talking to this woman who I was like, oh, she would be like a really great connection to have. And like, I couldn't tell like if she was like you know, 'cause like sometimes like you go up to people and they're like, oh, here's another person trying to like, you know, talk to me about like this stuff that I do. Or if she was like really feeling me, but then like this person like came up and they were like, oh, I know this event is over and like everybody's supposed to be leaving, but I just wanted to tell you how much that I love Find That Lizard and blah, 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 blah. And so the lady who I was talking to, she was like, oh, let me go on Twitter and like let me look her up right quick. Apparently she's actually doing something and she's just not all talk here. So like people like at a certain point, like people actually like do get to like know you and know who you are. And for like a lot of professions, it's just like it's all about who you know and who knows you type of thing. And like even with science and academia, it's still like that. And so by making yourself known, you're giving yourself more opportunities.
Yeah, for me too, in terms of time, I don't want to even think about the amount of time that I spent on this, like, especially right now with virology being such a relevant topic. The amount of messages that I get, the amount of inquiries by journals or newspapers that I get just to explain things. Right now, I think, of course, when I was starting, maybe, I mean, creating original content, 15 minutes when you're starting. Now, I'm even thinking about what I'll be tweeting tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And it might change depending on the circumstances. Like right now, I probably would not be tweeting about my personal issues when the whole world is in this situation. So you also have to always keep in mind the context of what the world is going on, what everything's going on right now. For example, like I refuse to tweet science articles on the weekends because I'm a pro advocate for mental health balance, and I believe that the last thing that I want to be is, if that is my brand, to be, oh, here, read all these articles on a Saturday. So like I try to keep that in mind, and just thinking the logistics and crafting the tweet, just that it fits in those 200 and something characters, that people want to like it, that people want to retweet it. What picture should we go there? Sometimes I just draft it and just put it in a Word document, and then I just start editing every now and then. Like just that part alone takes hours. But that is, you know, at this point it's a choice, is because I know that it's taking me one step closer to my end goal. So, and I'm okay with that. But it depends. Again, it depends on your goal. It depends on how much you want to invest. Invest in terms of what is your brand. It all comes down to what is your goal and what is your brand. I think all of us can agree that the people with the most number of followers and the ones that are almost like the Scicomm influencers, if you will, are the ones that I don't even have to explain to you who they are. And if I just say Sarah Attack, you already know squids and Scapa scientists. Like that is a brand. When all you have to hear is their name and you already associate something with it, that takes time. And that is important, of like not diluting your tweets enough. Yes, we all tweet about personal lives too, but at the end of the day, if you want to have that degree of branding, that's what you want. You want people to associate your name with something. Aaron, Find the Lizard immediately. What can I gain from it? I've gotten job offers, I've gotten seminars. 2 years ago, I was finishing my postdoc, and back then, 2 years ago, I did not have the amount of followers that I have right now. And I just tweeted, like, I finished my first postdoc and I'm looking for another postdoc, like, and I just took my CV, made it as a JPEG, a summary, and here's a link for the full one. And I'm looking for blah, blah, and I got 14 job offers in like 2 weeks. It's like, there is a lot of benefits. I get invitations to give seminars. A lot of them are paid for. Or conferences, like I think in my inbox there's one also for it's either on science communication, it's either on diversity. They will all relate to your brand. Now a lot of them are virology focused, write articles for magazines or whatever. So once you have that branding set, and again, for that you have to have a goal, something that you're extremely passionate about. Otherwise, it's not like you can be changing all the time, because then you want consistency. You cannot be from like lasers to I'm going to talk about birds now and then the next day. So, but it does help. I mean, networking immensely. I think going to conferences in my field, back in the day, I would have just been sitting on a table myself, like waiting. I'm an introvert. I would be waiting for someone to like join me and then awkwardly establish a conversation. Now it's the opposite. I think when Aaron and I were in Sagnas in Hawaii last year, I could barely make it to the talks because people were like coming at you and asking, and just that friendship part of putting the face of all the people who have been commenting and liking your stuff and likewise and vice versa, putting them in front of you and having that conversation now, it just breaks so many walls that were there before. Being at the airport and people like yelling, "Oh, are you the guy from Twitter?" Like even at Costco while getting my groceries. So, and it's not just fame. It's like people who are generally interested in what you're doing. Or I have family that have questions about viruses that you have a second to discuss it. So like it really brings my profession and why I do or I study what I study into the grand context of things. And it helps me realize that my research is not in the void, that it's not just the publication, is not the single output of what I do in the lab, but how it impacts other people and their interest in learning about what I do.
Great, thank you. Those are really awesome answers. And I think you've already given a lot of helpful tips on how people can get started on Twitter or grow their Twitter following. But now I'm guessing most people in this chat, like me, don't have the 20,000 followers that you guys have. And we're not quite at the point where we may have a brand, we may not have a brand, but we're just not that big to really think about tweeting, you know, spending hours on one tweet, maybe. But if you were to give advice to somebody either really just starting out or somebody who just has, you know, under 100, under a few hundred followers, what are some actionable steps that somebody could do so that it doesn't seem like this big overwhelming thing where we've got to try and get to thousands of followers? Talk about some actionable steps. Aaron, if you want, or Ephra, if you've got an answer, go ahead.
But before I forget, I think there's a couple of things, of course, like make sure that your bio is well crafted so that you don't lose followers or potential followers from the get-go. But I was giving a seminar talk the other day, and that question came up, and it's almost like there's and people I think there were really two main fears. There were, I don't think my content is going to be good enough, or I'm just too scared to be fighting with all the influencers that are gonna get like, it is a fear of being judged and the fear that the content is not gonna be good enough. And people were like, well, I studied like fish guts, like that's not interesting. And I'll beg to differ. I said, if you want to grow your audience, especially at the beginning, instead of launching facts at you, almost do like exactly what Aaron is doing. Phrase it as questions, because that's what you want really is people commenting and the engagement part. And two, just don't be afraid to reach out to the people that you would think of as unreachable, the ones with the 20,000, 50,000 followers, and you'll be like, well, they never reply to my messages, or I'll never comment because they'll never reply back. Like, make sure that wall is out of the way, because we're just regular people. And comment and sometimes commenting and engaging with those people are extremely valuable, because they're the ones that a lot of people are going to read their comments. And if you have a solid thought or opinion, then that is going to drag people also to your account, as long as, of course, you're polite and all that. But like, also take advantage of, and if you have questions, like reach out to them. Hopefully, if they got to that point, chances are that they're going to have a very nice personality and they're going to be willing to help you get to wherever you want to go.
Yeah, so definitely everything that Ephra said, and it's really like, for me, when I was first starting, I was just kind of like, well, what am I even gonna post about? And so like I had like some stuff from like pictures from like my undergraduate research that was like a couple of years old. And so like I kind of started posting about that, and then posting about like, I did like one post when I had only a couple of hundred followers that about making a poster presentation, and like that got me like easily maybe like 100 followers, just making a post about like a poster presentation, because like a lot of people don't know how to do posters at a scientific conference and stuff like that. So it's really just kind of like post about what you know, and then eventually you'll kind of start to see what people are really engaging with, and then either that's something that you really like and you want to continue posting about even more, or it's not necessarily something you want to continue posting about more, and so then you just post about other things until you kind of find that match of, this is what I like to talk about, this is what I have my expertise in, this is what I want to post more about, and other people also like it. And then also, like Ephra said, don't be afraid to like, you know, tweet at the people who have like bigger followings and stuff. Like if I don't care about anyone's follower count. If they post about something that I think is interesting, I'm gonna like retweet it or comment on it or whatever. It doesn't really matter. And I do try to like get to people's messages. Like I do have a lot. I do get a lot of messages. So like sometimes it's just overwhelming and it's hard to see everything from everyone. And then it's also just like, I don't want to burn myself out trying to reply to absolutely like everything. But like if people like tag me and stuff, like I'm more likely to respond to that, because it's like, I guess for like, it's not quite as often with people like actually like tagging me and stuff as like people trying to like DM me. So if I see like I'm tagged in something, then like that's something that I'm gonna like more immediately like look at. And so like, you know, just like tag people know like what's gonna be like easiest for them to like respond to. So it's just like, you know, just go ahead and shoot your shot. If you want somebody to like retweet you, it's like, it's not like taboo to ask somebody to be like, hey, this is what I'm doing, do you think it's cool, can you like retweet this, or like just like to tag them in it and like just see what happens. Like definitely just go ahead and do that. And then even like when I didn't have that many followers, like some of the bigger accounts, like I just started interacting with them, and like we ended up becoming Twitter friends and stuff like that. And so now like if they see my stuff, like they'll just, you know, go ahead and like retweet it for me or whatever. So don't be afraid to like try to make those connections and like those like interactions, because most of the times like the whole point of Twitter is like to talk to other people. So a lot of times as far as Scicomm, people will talk back to you. Yeah.
So I've got more questions I could ask you, but there are a couple popping up in the comments section or in the chat section. I've got, would you recommend having 2 separate Twitter accounts, one for your brand and a separate one for your personal stuff? And then the second question is, what are your thoughts on communicating science through an institutional account or an account of a research group or a lab? And you can both answer both if you want, or one can take one question. Whoever's got a thought on it.
That's fine. I get that question asked a lot. The first one about 2 separate accounts, and I'm a biologist, so the answer is always it depends. And but it really depends on the balance and like, what do you mean by personal stuff? Like how often? Because if you're just gonna be posting every day pictures of you like having your coffee, or this is what I have for dinner, or this is, it will dilute out your brand and it will affect it. So, and if that is the case, then by all means, I have followers who follow me twice, because one is from their personal account and one is from their Scicomm account. I only have the one and then Unique Scientist. But I do have my Instagram, it is my personal and it's private. And I think I have like 10 followers because it is my family. Like, and so I keep that completely separate, even though I do post quite a bit of personal stuff on Twitter, because I also want people to acknowledge that I am a human, that I have a life outside science, that I'm gonna be a scientist and I am a writer and I do all this, but hey, I have 5 dogs and I love nature and I'm a personal trainer. Like I have all these passions outside. As long as they don't dilute, at least in terms of number and engagement, your branding, that is up to you. And in terms of I think that communicating through an institutional account or a research group. So a lot of people don't know that I actually manage a 3rd account that is for a journal. I manage the molecular biology of the cell journal. And they pay me for it. So that is SciGig. And so I get like $400 a month just to tweet their articles. So it's 2 issues a month. If issue, let's say that he has like 10, 15 articles. So like I read, so the job description is like I have to tweet 3 articles from the journal a day, 5 days a week. So that means a week I have to read 15 articles and summarize them and take a picture from the journal and put it there, make a tweet. And so that is my side gig, and I do it on the weekends. I just schedule all the tweets for the next week in advance through a scheduling platform, and it's all good. I get my check. But I will say, and once a month I have to submit reports on how my engagement and the analytics and how many followers I got. And I will say those accounts are very, very hard to grow. And there's a following count because for the most part, I follow the journal because they pay me and it is my field, so it's fine. But it's so hard to engage with something that you cannot see when the picture that they have is a logo of the journal, when we're not allowed to engage. So we cannot just ask questions. It's all, oh, I can paraphrase, which is what I do for a journal. It's like, oh, did you know that there's this new protein that was found to be involved in Alzheimer's disease? And here's the click here for the full report. Yes, I get new followers. I think now we're almost close to 5,000. When I got it was like 3,000, but it took months to get there because even if I see that stuff on my timeline, I may like it. Doesn't mean that I didn't click on it or like read the abstract of the paper, but it's very unlikely that I will retweet it. So meaning it's gonna take you much, much longer. So if it is your brand, that is different. If you're gonna be managing the page from a journal, from a lab, just be aware that it's gonna take you longer. And I hate using the word liability, but the liability is larger because whatever you post from that lab is going to be assumed that it represents the vision of the lab altogether, not just yours. So that is a little bit of a thing to consider there.
Erin, do you have anything else to add about those 2 questions?
Yeah, Efra pretty much sums it up. From my Twitter account is personal and professional. There are some things where I'm just like, oh, well, there's people following me and I have to like kind of like stick to my brand. So I'm not really gonna like retweet that particular thing or like that particular thing, even though if it was like a personal account, I probably would. For Instagram, I do have 2 different accounts. Because like I started off with just a personal account on Instagram, and then when I started doing the Find That Lizard stuff and started to like get bigger with that, I was just like, well, there's some things that I post here on my personal account that I don't need everybody seeing, so I'm gonna keep those 2 separate. And so like that's the way that I post all my personal stuff. And then I also do run a institutional account. So I work for the Southwest Climate Adaptation Science Center. And so like I post stuff on Twitter for them and Facebook. And just like Efra said, it's really difficult to grow those accounts because they have like a very specific, very narrow brand. And something that I found is difficult for my job is that we fund people at other universities to do work, and so those other universities are normally like bigger name than our actual Southwest CASC, and so the other institutions tend to like get all the prestige from whatever it is that the researchers are doing. So now we're kind of like trying to figure out, okay, so how can we get some of that over here in order to like grow our following, in order to, you know, be seen as useful. And so and then also like I have to find relevant information for multiple different states because we fund people at institutions at, you know, in Arizona and California and Colorado and stuff like that. So it's kind of like it's a more strict way of creating content and managing that brand. So yeah, it's definitely more difficult than just like your own account where there are less rules.
And we had one more question in the chat for, oh, 2 more. Efra, could you give an example of a post that you crafted specifically for engagement, retweets, versus the one that was just for likes. And I'm guessing they mean, talk about the difference between a tweet that would get a lot of retweets and a tweet that would get a lot of likes. I'm having trouble imagining what the difference in language content looks like. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. Almost think about it as if you were on a date, as silly as it sounds. You might ask someone, or even there's a difference between making a statement, I like coffee. People are gonna be like, good for you. If you say like, do you like coffee? They're gonna be like, yes or no. But if you ask what is your favorite drink, that will engage them. That will not just be a yes or no. So like try to think about if put yourself in another situation and read the tweet that you crafted, would you reply to that? Or would you just like it? Or would you just be neutral? And more than often, that will give you the answer. And so I use that again, depending on the day. And I'm very open about mental health. There's days that I just do not want to talk to people. I just don't want, I want them, and I'm okay like commenting on their stuff, but I don't necessarily want to get, I'm sure Aaron will agree. Sometimes a day, I think yesterday I got like 3,000 notifications. Like there's days, like yesterday, I took the day off. I'm okay getting 3,000 notifications on my phone because I tweeted something about viruses. Now today, probably not. And so there's different strategies. Like yesterday, people were commenting me on the thread that I wrote about what is a virus. So every time that someone would say, oh, thank you for this, I reply back, thank you, because I know that my thank you would then show up on the timeline of all my followers. Like it will just keep refreshing every time that I would reply back. Whether if I was just saying like or clicking like, probably not. Now, this morning I got up and I had like 500 notifications again, still on that same thread. If I was to reply back and say thanks to everyone, it would just refresh on everyone's timeline all over again, meaning it would just give me 1,000 new notifications today. I didn't want to do that today. So that is that is an option. Same as if someone was to comment on a very old tweet, if you reply back, it will bring it back to life. That is the algorithm. So choose wisely, and that is a very personal choice. But if you choose to engage and you don't have time, as Erin said, it will affect how people perceive your responsiveness to be.
Sounds like it's going back to that time management, which I will have to do here in about 5 minutes when our chat ends. But I've got one a question in the chat for Erin, and then I think one for both of you. So we'll try and do those and then end on a few people you would suggest we follow. And there's one more question too, but Erin, can you mention, you mentioned that your Twitter is an advocacy for Black women as a minority in the field. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this? Also at Ephra and Erin, how much of a difference does a PhD make in being a science communicator? Because someone with a master's or someone who is not directly in the lab is often still make an impact, which I think the answer is yes. But we'll start with that first question about, can you elaborate a little more on your advocacy for Black women in science?
All right, so for me, it's essentially, I'm just like posting about my experiences. So recently I did do a thread about being Black in wildlife fields in academia, and specifically being like a Black woman and like different experiences that I've had where people have been like, you know, people who are like in management positions who are just like, oh, well, you know, the only reason that when I didn't get this job when I was right out of college is because of affirmative action. And so like they were looking for a certain kind of person and I wasn't it. And I was just like, didn't you just sit here telling us for 20 minutes about how you went to college for something totally unrelated to wildlife and you had no experience whatsoever? You just decided one day that this is what you wanted to do. So maybe that other person was just more qualified. And like I said that to them and they were like, you know, that's probably true. But like having like experiences like those and just like letting other people know that they're not alone in having those experiences, and then also being like, the rest of y'all who are talking all this mess need to stop. and just like making threads about, you know, white supremacy and systematic injustice and epistemic injustice, and just like the different like inequalities that Black women and then other people of color have to face in science and academia. Because like at this point, like I fully embrace like the angry Black woman trope where I'm just like, you know, not everybody is gonna feel comfortable to speak their truth. Not everybody's gonna feel comfortable to call out like the bigoted people in these communities. But I do feel like, it's not that I feel comfortable, it's just like I'm just kind of one of those people who are just like, if I don't do it, who will? There's not enough people like speaking out and being heard. And if I add my voice to the collective voice, maybe one day it'll get loud enough where people actually like listen and try to make a difference. And so that's like kind of like how like I advocate is like I just call people out on their bullshit. It's just one of those things where it's just like, okay, this is a mess and you know, I'm not here for it. You need to clean it up because this is not cool. And then going into the next question, you definitely don't have to have a PhD. I know plenty of people who have like masters or just like bachelor's degrees and stuff like that. And it's like I started the PhD before I knew I wanted to go into science communication. I'm continuing with the PhD because I always wanted to be called Dr. McGee, like from when I was a child. Like we was like, oh, she's gonna be Dr. McGee, because I thought I wanted to be a vet, so a different type of doctor. But then I started with this and I'm just like, well, at this point, I'm gonna just finish what I started type of thing. So you definitely don't need to have a PhD in order to do it, as long as you have some sort of you know, interest or expertise. And like that kind of goes into like the other question of followers who are experts versus, you know, members of the general public. Once you get on Twitter, it doesn't really matter a whole lot unless people are just coming in here with like a whole bunch of misinformation. And that's like the only time that it really matters, because like what I realize is that a lot of the people who follow me, some of them had zero interest in lizards, and then some of them actually like were really into herpetology, and like they were just, you know, casual herpetologists, like doing stuff in like their backyards or in their free times. And like these people are like really knowledgeable, and the only reason is because that they aren't called experts is because they don't have any formal training, but that doesn't negate the knowledge that they do have. And I think that's one of the things that's really important. Like, don't go getting on a high horse just because you have, you know, like a higher ed degree in a particular topic. Like somebody can still, you know, also be an expert about whatever it is without that, because they're a hobbyist. Like, because that's their hobby, they're really into it. They're reading they know how to read a field guide. They know how to identify individual lizards and stuff like that, or whatever it is in the topic. They get it. And so like I think that's what's more important, to figure out like who is genuinely here because they're interested in what you have to say, whether they know nothing about it or they know all the things about it, and then who is there just to be, you know, a troll or whatever. And so just figuring like that out. But like at a certain point, it doesn't matter who also has a degree or not. It's just really who's interested and who is interacting in a positive manner.
So I know we've got some more questions in the chat, but unfortunately we are out of time, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I'm going to end the chat there, and thank you both so much for talking with us. I think that was incredibly helpful. And we'll just end on 3 people that you would suggest everyone follow.
All right, well, you know, me, of course, follow me, Ephra. Then there's also, oh, I should have wrote it down, because now that you asked that question, my mind has gone blank.
Yeah, I would say like those astronerd, like _ astro. Like I think her stuff is so inspirational. Like it could be, I could have the worst day and then I read one of her tweets, and I can just type in here. And I think she's inspiring. She's just her true self. Faculty, I like Prashi Avasti at Prashi AC. I love her content as a new assistant professor. I think she started her Slack channel for new PIs, and all the amount of work that she does to help new assistant professors build a community in their lab and all that. I think that is very valuable. And then third, Kat Milligan Myrie at Paktuk. I'm going to put them here in the chat. I love how she shares her journey as a Native American in science and all the struggles that she's been through. And so again, putting those assistant professors, like being able to communicate with trainees and say, your struggles were my struggles too. I think that is very, I love how they do it. So I'll just copy and paste them here in the group chat now.
Thank you. And I can add that when I add it to the mentor chat channel. Erin, did you unblank?
Yeah, so I have a couple people. So like who got me inspired to do Twitter, I had mentioned at the beginning, was like my advisor, Michael Bogan. So he posts a lot about dragonflies and damselflies and stuff to do with like stream ecology and stuff like that. So he's a really awesome follow. Then there's Lydia. She's at One Native Soil Nerd. She's indigenous and she works out of Tucson, and she does like a lot of stuff with like looking at how soils react to like mining and stuff like that. And like she's just like she's very much also advocate, and so like she's great to like follow and everything. And then there's Karina Newsom. She's also an Black woman interested in like wildlife and stuff like that. And there's Jason Ward, who definitely he has like his own show that's Birds of America, and like he's going to be starting Birds in North America. And so just like supporting people who are, you know, not traditionally seen on like nature shows and things like that is like super important. So yeah, there's a few people.
All right, well, thank you guys so much. And I'm planning to put together a document with some condensed tips, and I'll add these people that you mentioned in that document. Yeah, thank you so much. We really.
Go out. So any of you follow me or just follow me, or before and I don't follow you back, like please send me a DM or something. Like I get a lot of notifications, so sometimes people get offended because I don't follow them back, and I'm like, my phone is vibrating like every second. So like, if you want to start that connection, just DM me and I'll follow you. I just want to make that clear because I am a human and I forget. So.
Yeah, same.
All right. Well, thank you. And thanks everybody for coming to the mentor chat. Our next one next month will be how to start a science podcast. So look out for that email. And everybody stay safe, wash your hands, don't touch your face, and have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. And now I need to get Joe's attention to end the chat. Joe, are you still there? And you
Yeah, I'm
guys
still here.
Okay, can you end the chat?
I'm going to stop recording.
Okay.
Do you want to stop cloud recording? Yes.